Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's program, our midweek Maranatha Prophecy Update. Glad to have everyone joining along with us today. We're going to be talking about seducing spirits, and we've got on guests. Man, we haven't had you on in a bit, and to have you on live today is really cool. We got Pete Garcia on today, everyone. Please welcome Pete Garcia in the chat. So how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. It's busy. Life's busy. We had the Oklahoma conference a couple weeks ago, and then before that, we had the Rockwall conference. So this has been a busy fall so far. So I'm looking forward to today. And it's been way too long. I think the last time we did anything was in Ireland.
Oh my gosh, no way. Are you serious? Has it been that long?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow. I didn't think it was that long. Wow. Well, man, this is like super overdue. That was more than I even realized. But it's awesome to be able to have you on live. I always like doing live programs. I do my best to not do something unless it's live because I just like the vibe of it and interacting with everyone that's online. Tinkerbell that's saying hi right now. Hi back to you, Tinkerbell, and all you guys and gals on there. We got Debbie on there and saying hi to you and to me, Pete, and all of them. So, but I just like the vibe of it being live. So. All right, well, hey, we got some things to talk about today. So, seducing spirits, man, we live in some pretty wicked times, don't we? I mean, what are your thoughts about? In fact, this is something I didn't even tell you that I was going to mention this to you, but it just kind of came to mind a few minutes ago. Just kind of off the cuff here. What are your thoughts about this? 3-eye, interstellar Atlas comet thing that's out there. What's your thoughts? There's a whole lot of hoopla on this thing, and just curious, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of program. I've been following this pretty closely for, I guess, since like about August. And I think what's fascinating to me is that, Avi Loeb, the professor from Harvard, was the first guy to come out and really address it in a public way to say, this is the third interstellar object. It doesn't seem to be acting like a normal comet does, and he posited that perhaps there might be some type of artificiality to it or whatever. And that was back in August and in late July, I believe. And everybody kind of laughed at him, and it was pretty skeptical of his, what he was talking about. But as this thing has been moving closer, and now it's going through perihelion, like today and I guess tomorrow, which, going around the sun, they're slingshotting out around the sun. There's just so many weird things going on with this. It's not even a comet. I mean, maybe it is a comet, but it's not unlike any comet we've ever really seen.
It's different for sure.
Yeah, the size of it's about the size of Manhattan Island. It is the fastest object that we've seen come through our solar system, and it is not behaving in ways that traditional comets would behave in. It had things like an anti-tail, so the tail was going out in front of it.
Yeah, it's weird.
The solar winds would blow the tail behind it. That's what makes a comet look like a comet, like a Hale-Bopp and these other ones.
Right.
It's the material composition. Usually when you have nickel and iron, you always have one with the other because they come from a dying star. When that star goes into supernova, explodes, it shoots out nickel and iron together. And so you always find those together, those two materials. Well, it had nickel, but no iron. So that seemed to be looking like it had some type of artificiality because you don't really have that without interference, machining it, manufacturing it to whatever degree. It's coming in on the ecliptic plane. So if you think about the Milky Way galaxy, it's just a flat kind of a disk. And then you have like the outer disk and on both sides, it makes it a little fatter, but the bulk of the Milky Way, it sits on kind of a flat disk, and not like flat Earth, but like the expand, the way that the Milky Way spirals out, the Fibonacci spiral type thing. And so this thing is coming in like 3 degrees off the ecliptic plane, so basically dead even. The other two interstellar objects, Borisov and Oumuamua, they came in like what we would call like the north. They came in from the top down and kind of pierced through the galaxy and went back out. But this one is kind of skimming the surface like if you sling a smooth stone across a pond, and it's coming in at such a way that it is not observable by the only planet that could observe it, that has intelligent life on it that could observe it. And it's at the most opportune time for us to see it is at the exact same time it's on the other side of the sun, and we can't see the sun's glare is blocking it. And I saw yesterday that it's not hiding behind the sun. I got on Stellarium yesterday, and you can track it, you can follow it out, and you can see that it's kind of opposite on the opposite side of the sun right now. It was just going past Venus, and it's almost kind of in line with us, but not in line with the sun. So it's kind of a weird trajectory out. And my concern about it wasn't whether it was aliens or not. I was thinking about, as it goes back out, it's going to go it's going to dip through the ecliptic plane that our planets kind of all rotate on, with the exception of Pluto. But as it goes back out through the ecliptic plane, it's going to pass through the asteroid belt that separates the inner planets from the outer planets. And my concern was that if it's as big as we think it is, it may be bigger. It could ricochet, could cause those rocks, those asteroids that are just floating around in space out there, to scatter like when you hit a cue ball into a rack balls on a pool table, and those things just kind of go everywhere. Now, it may not hit anything, but we can't say it's not going to hit it. We don't know until it actually goes through it. So, and that could have, that could make space travel incredibly dangerous if we disrupt the order of how things are floating around out there. So I don't know. It's interesting, and so it's going through perihelion now, and now I guess it's going to be moving back out. But we should be able to. It should be moving out past somewhere in Jupiter in December, around the December timeframe. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. We haven't seen. I mean, we don't have much to go off of. I mean, we've only had two other items come into us from interstellar space, come into our area of the neighborhood, so to speak. So it's not like we have a whole lot to go by, but it sure has been getting a whole lot of attention out there. And there's a lot of things, though, that are getting a lot of attention out there, though, for sure, I'd say, and that find their way into the news. And, we see, in fact, I had sent you this earlier today, and I'm sure that you've seen it as well. I don't have it to bring up on the screen for anyone today, but right here, bombshell footage shows mystery UFO-like aircraft being tested in secret experiments at U.S. weapons base Skunk Works. And I've watched a couple of videos on this and some individual clips on this and everything, and it is just absolutely fascinating. I mean, the things that we're developing, that the U.S. military is developing, China is developing, a couple others out there that are developing, are absolutely incredible things. And have you seen the video on this? Have you done much reading on this particular item?
I didn't get a chance to look at this in particular, but I'm pretty read up on the technology that we've been tinkering with since the end of World War II. So,
right.
And then, obviously with all of the disclosure hearings that we've had over the past few years, we know that there's things out there that are flying around in our atmosphere. Well, they call it all domain anomalies now. So ADA, whether it's in the atmosphere, or it's in low Earth orbit kind of air, space, underwater. There's stuff happening like crazy everywhere. And so we know that it's not us. We know it's not the Russians or the Chinese. Nobody has this type of technology that can travel 200 miles an hour underwater without even making a splash going into the water, or flying at these incredible speeds that don't even have any type of visible exhaust or heat plumes coming out of it or anything. We don't know how it's being how it's moving at these speeds, or it's making 90-degree turns at Mach 3. There's just so many weird things that seem to defy the laws of physics right now. But they're it certainly seems that we would have some of that technology. Somebody would have it somewhere. And so it
Well,
seems like in the 50s that we got our hands on some of it.
well, when we talk about defying the laws of physics, if we've got our Navy, Air Force, different ones that are viewing these things, and they're saying, based on this and based on that, it's defying the laws of physics, then would you say then that maybe we can defy the known laws of physics then if these things are being observable? Or is there something else at play here?
This goes back, not to rabbit trail too far, but this goes back to like the pre-flood days, and if you hold to or believe in any of the book of First Enoch about how these fallen angels are
Right.
watching, teaching humans how to do things that we shouldn't know how to do, make weapons, all the different kinds of stuff that their knowledge was capable of transferring over to us. It seems in keeping that throughout time, man has always been trying to tap into that, and at some certain places they are given some types of information, forbidden knowledge, to actually be able to kind of break the plateau, get beyond where people were stuck at in terms of technology, and go on and make that breakthrough. Guys like Einstein, Isaac Newton, Galileo, Copernicus, Kepler, going all the way back and forth throughout time. These guys aren't the norm; they're the exception to the norm. But imagine that certain people are enabled to be given insight into things. And I'm not saying those guys all tapped into the demonic realm to get that information. I'm just saying sometimes they did. Some of those guys probably did. And they were given information and that stuff that we typically don't know, or they have that aha moment, and something clicks and it makes sense. But I think also the restrainer has been largely the Holy Spirit through the church, but the restrainer, Holy Spirit, has been limiting how fast man advances. If we think about how fast technologies come about just in the last 125 years. I mean, imagine if Hitler had the nuclear bomb, or ICBMs, or the internet. If Genghis Khan had GPS, or
Right.
Google Earth or something, like how different the world would be. So God has allowed mankind to progress at a certain rate, and it seems like mankind has always been trying to dip into the spiritual domain to get more knowledge, this forbidden knowledge, and we see that throughout history. They started off doing this through rituals, through religion, through magic, the supernatural type of approach to it. And as time advanced and technology increased, we're trying to merge technology with the supernatural. And so I think that this, from at least the 50s, we were given, I don't know if the Nazis had the bell-shaped craft, but they have some type of anti-gravity technology. And we have that. We have anti-gravity technology. And somehow these things are able to use these things to whatever effects. And that may be DARPA and these other kind of very super secretive groups that, hide behind layers and layers and layers of classification and even like high level leaders in Congress and Senate, and even many presidents probably didn't even have information on what was all happening at these upper echelons of classification and secrecy.
Yeah, it's interesting because, we can talk about AI and quantum computing and how they've been reporting now for probably about a year or somewhere around there, how they've been able to establish teleportation over a small distance for a small amount of time, which I find absolutely fascinating that they've been able to achieve that. Many of the things that you've mentioned, we could think about just the Goddard Tunnel and things with that, things with CERN, these witchcraft kind of ceremonies and these ancient gods that they bring into these things. I mean, it's totally creepy, big time. You had mentioned DARPA. I was looking up some stuff here with DARPA. over the past few days, and DARPA and its connections to really the demonic, and how our government has utilized these things for quite some time. And I think a lot of people really just don't realize it. This right here, Why the United States Government Embraced the Occult. A new book chronicles decades of extravagant attempts to weaponize psychic powers. Even something that I was talking about earlier this year, how the CIA, and this was something that was done, I believe it was all the way back in the 80s, Pete, but it's for whatever reason, it came back into focus again this year, how the CIA was utilizing psychics and these kinds of things in trying to find the location of the Ark of the Covenant, and just some of the creepy stuff with that, and how they're drawing out some of these things, and I've seen the drawings of it, and it, to me, it's just the point that they would go there, right? The very point that they would actually seek after those things and go there. I mean, talk about seducing spirits and utilizing those things in these last days.
Well, we did it, in recent history, the U.S. did it at the end of World War II because the space race, we had just dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. Shortly thereafter, the Soviets had acquired this technology, either through stealing the research or co-opting it or whatever the case was. Because at the end of World War II, when we brought over 1,600 Nazi scientists under Operation Paperclip, the Soviets had their same version of Operation Paperclip. I can't say it in Russian, but they had that own version where they went in and they grabbed in a bunch of Nazi scientists and researchers and took them back to the Soviet Union and began developing their version of the space program. And then by the 1960s, the Russians had brought out some psychics and supposedly were being able to do move things with their mind with ESP and telekinesis and that kind of stuff, move things with their mind, and that put the CIA, which at this point in time was only about 10 years old as an organization, back on their heels because they had beat us to space. They had been the first country to put a man in space. They seemed like they were beating us everywhere in every one of these races. They were spreading their influence throughout the world, spreading communism. And so now they trot out these psychics that seem like they could do stuff with their mind. So the CIA threw themselves, head first into trying to close that gap there with the Soviets and how to harness human psychic powers. Mm-hmm. There's a number of programs going back from the 50s and 60s up until even today. I think they still use it. In fact, there was remote viewers brought on to remote view 3i Atlas and to see what is it. And the fact that NASA has photographs when it did its close flyby of Mars, and they have yet to release those photographs because of the government shutdown. It seems I don't know. It seems unnecessarily secretive. If it's just a comet, they should have just released the photos. But it seems like they have some really good photos. The Chinese haven't released their photos either. The European Space Agency has, but it's kind of like, can't really make out a whole lot. But we did make out from the ESA was that comet seems to be shapeshifting. I've got in my presentation in Oklahoma, I was showing like a series of like 8 pictures that they have, and it's every picture. It looks like a different shape. It's super bizarre, but the U.S. has long been invested in trying to tap into to get the edge on our geopolitical enemies by using whatever they can, and whether that's psychics or alien type of fallen angel technology, whatever. We're going to try and do that all in the name of national security.
Well, this whole thing again that the U.S. Sun was reporting on that I quoted a while ago, and and some other news outlets out there about this footage of this mystery UFO-like aircraft that's being tested out there at Skunk Works. That this guy was able to somehow get some of the photos of this and some of the video on this, and it's absolutely incredible. And it just makes me think of reverse engineering, just like you're talking about, reverse engineering. And I mean, this has been discussed for many, many decades right now. And then we've got some of these guys that have come before Congress talking about these all of these kinds of things. You've got Luis Elizondo and David Gresh and others. I mean, and these guys are well-vetted men that have been in our Defense Department, the highest levels of clearances. And they're coming before Congress. They're sharing what they can share, some of what they've shared publicly, other things that they're sharing, I think maybe like in the skiff or something like that, because they can't share some of the things out there in the public because it does involve some U.S. secrets and things like that. And I get that. That totally makes sense. But I mean, what's your thoughts on these two guys, just as an example? I mean, I've been following stuff with both of them for a bit, and they just seem like they're completely solid and well vetted. In fact, before you answer that question, I was even watching, this was probably earlier this year, and I don't even remember the name of the guy right now, but this individual who is this language expert. And he knows how to detect, when someone actually believes what they're saying, if they're lying, those kinds of things, because there's certain things that people tend to do, and there's a whole science behind it. And he's done that with when David Grush was there before Congress, and he was like, this guy believes what he's saying. He completely believes what he's saying. I mean, what are your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, Elizondo, Grush, and Fravor was the pilot. I think he was flying F-18s or whatever, and he's the one that had the video of the Tic Tac aircraft on the FLIR camera, the forward-looking infrared camera. Very credible. These guys have everything to lose and nothing to gain by coming out and doing disclosure. What they believe personally, I don't know. I've seen videos where guys seem to be working kind of hand in hand with these, I'm not calling them fallen angels, I'm not calling them aliens or whatever, but working with them. And and this was a video that came out, I don't know, like a year or so ago. And he was talking about how we felt really, really good. And they were able to communicate telepathically. And he was a helicopter pilot flying stuff back and forth for the government, I don't know, these secret locations and stuff. So I don't know what they believe personally, but I believe that they believe what they saw. And with the case of David Fravor, like, I mean, you have the evidence right there. Even the Tic Tac video, there was a video that came out not too long ago that was declassified in the most recent disclosure hearing. And it shows something flying over there off the coast of Yemen or Oman, somewhere in that area off the southern coast of Saudi Arabia. And it looks like a Hellfire missile was shot into it, and it split the missile in half, and it just kept flying. So I don't know what these guys personally believe. I think Elizondo has probably been more open about it, but for the life of me, I can't remember what position he holds to as to what he thinks they are. But I think the general consensus, though, is that, well, what's interesting is that we've seen the consensus shift from about 2017 forward and then 2017 backwards. So before 2017, when serious men came out to talk about UFOs or UAP, whatever, they would describe these as extraterrestrial. They were not from our planet. We don't know what they look like or blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. But now they're describing them as interdimensional beings. So I think the fact that we're recognizing that these ships and these fallen angel technology are able to break and defy the laws of physics, it seems that they are not bound by our reality like we are. in the same way that 3I Atlas is an interstellar object. It came from another star system. It is not bound by our Earth's sun. It doesn't revolve around our sun. It comes in at a hyperbolic speed. That means it's coming in so fast that it can escape the sun's gravity on the way out. And so it's not bound by our solar system. These beings are interacting in a way that they're not bound with our reality, because they can appear and disappear at will. They can, again, make 90-degree turns at Mach 3 or Mach 4, thousands of miles an hour, which we know that's physically impossible. So, I mean, the things that they're doing seem to defy reality. So, at least they're coming out and acknowledging that these things don't seem to be bound to our reality. Hence, the interdimensional classification is now becoming more normalized, I guess.
Right. I mean, it's amazing to think how some kind of an aircraft, if that's even the right word to use, some of these things that have been observed doing these things at those incredible speeds, right angles, how it's not breaking up. I mean, how does that happen?
How does the occupants inside that ship survive such a such a turn? The G forces alone would
The
kill
G forces
anything.
alone, right?
It
Seriously,
would make it into liquefy it.
right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just we just don't have any answers for these things. But I mean, clearly something is happening to some degree. Exactly what? I mean, there's a lot of conjecture on that. We can talk about this forever. But it's clear that something is happening, and that some of our governments, the U.S. government, UK, some of the others, know that there's something going on. I believe that they're utilizing some of these things in some of their programs, reverse engineering perhaps, some of these other things, trying to get a particular technological edge over other governments, which is where, there may be those, and I've asked it before too, well, what's the secret about these things? Why don't they come out with it? Well, if they're trying to utilize some of these things for a technological edge over an adversarial nation, well, then from that standpoint, at least I guess I could understand why there would be keeping things at the highest level of secrecy. Because, I mean, if you think about it, any nation that could harness some of that power, some of that technology, whatever you want to call it, would really be quite a foe, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's in this kind of the same vein with artificial intelligence. Like when Vladimir Putin came out in 2017 and said that whichever nation develops artificial superintelligence first is going to rule the world.
Right.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. And so I think that we do have some technologies that the public by large don't know about. In fact, I know we do. And I mean, we were working on stuff at the place I was at in 2010, and that technology didn't come out for 5 or 6 years after that. So, right. And then we weren't even like top secret. We were just, we were just working on stuff, and it seemed we wanted to use it for an operational standpoint for Afghanistan and Iraq. So, but yeah, I think that whatever nation is going to be able to harness this technology first is going to be the one that's going to be able to rule everything. So if what I believe is true and what Scripture holds is true, we know that the revived Roman Empire becomes that final world empire in the last days, or the most powerful world empire in the last days. It becomes the world superpower. Then that means that something has to remove us from the top of the food chain. I think that happens to be the rapture. It could be some other event, but if it's the rapture and the U.S. begins to fall apart, it's not going to be that difficult for European militaries and leaders and things like that to work with American leadership who are pro-globalist, et cetera, to, hey, hand over the keys to the kingdom to a functioning government in Europe rather than whatever's left here in the U.S. So I think somehow we were going to aid Europe in becoming that final iteration of the final world superpower, and they will start artificial superintelligence. They will actually achieve that at a certain point. We don't know exactly when, but we know it's coming.
Yeah, it sure is. You know, there's all kinds of projections on that. And again, I have absolutely no idea, but the very fact that they're moving in that direction, they're trying to harness really the power of AI, which is really something incredible even right now. I mean, some of the videos that I've seen, actually I should say audio and video that I've seen and that I've heard of what AI is able to do right now, just that we know of from a non-governmental standpoint. All right, non-military standpoint. But what I don't even know what they can do in higher levels of the military that obviously it's not been released yet, but just what we know that they can do, it's absolutely incredible. I can't tell the difference with some of these videos, Pete.
Yeah.
Just watching some of them and listening to some of them, it is very, very hard to tell the difference. The only way that I would say that I can tell the difference in some of the higher quality ones, it's not by the visuals, it's not by the audios, but it's in the content of what an individual is saying. And when you know an individual well enough, then you'll be able to say, no, that does not hold to the theology that that person holds to, or that viewpoint that an individual would say. And so so in that something's not right here. There's something that's a fake, right?
Yeah, you can. You're right. Early on, it was pretty easy to tell
Very easy.
what was fake AI because the human would have like three hands, or three sets of teeth, or like too many teeth, or there was
Right.
always something off with the pictures. And then once the videos came out, the detail wasn't as good, or things were moving that shouldn't be moving, or as a guy was turning, his arm stays in place or his head stays in.
All
It's pretty
right.
obvious. But now, I mean, there are some videos I have to watch several times, and then I just look at it: is the context make sense? Does it make sense that
Right.
this would be happening in this situation, and does it normally happen like this? And then, yeah, but many, it's becoming harder and harder, and it's only going to get worse. And I would just say the Chat GPT AI stuff that we're privy to now. Just think that at the user level, we're able to use this stuff. At the government level, I am not surprised if they already have ASI, and it's in some kind of a not networked or anything. It's not connected to the internet because they can't let that out.
No.
And so I think probably at the highest levels, we have something approaching a very strong AGI and possibly even ASI, but it's not connected to anything. Therefore, it can't escape. It can't, get out of the Skynet. Can't be released or anything just yet. But I think that we probably have something close to that or approaching it already.
Right. Well, and I believe that where things like that could or would be utilized is in varying military operations. I mean, even right now, I mean, some of the talk going on between the U.S. and Russia doesn't sound so good. Some of the things going on right now between the United States and Venezuela, that's another thing as well there. And I don't know if you've paid much attention to everything that's happening there. And of course, we've got our biggest and baddest of all aircraft carriers, as if they're not big and bad enough. The biggest and baddest of all is not George Washington. What is it? Gerald Ford, there you go, Gerald Ford, and the whole strike group with that. And I mean, what is the message that you think Trump is trying to send over there? What do you think's really going on?
Well, this is part of that multi-dimensional chess that he's playing or whatever. Because on the public front, he's going to say that we're protecting the Monroe, or we're enforcing again the Monroe Doctrine, protecting our hemisphere from influences from China and from Russia and from other groups that would be making disadvantaging the United States to the point of it being national suicide. For example, if we let the Chinese fully control the Panama Canal, we've got to move ships from the Atlantic into the Pacific to go fight China, and they are shutting down, or they sabotage the Panama Canal so we can't travel through it. And then we have to go all the way around. Obviously, that is to our that would be a great disadvantage to the United States. And we will never allow the Chinese to fully control the Panama Canal at all, or pump fentanyl through these cartels coming out of Venezuela or Colombia to help destabilize the United States, or Russian actors, these Russian disinformation movements or groups that are trying to convert all the governments down there into socialist, communist type of, like what happened with Brazil, with the arrest of Bolsonaro and the bringing in of the Luna guy, who was a out and out, socialist. So there's influence wars going on right there, and I think that from the Monroe Doctrine, that's what Trump is using to justify his actions there. But obviously, this is also going to be used as leverage against China and against Russia. And if China is going to close off all their mineral rights and other countries, we want to make sure that we have access to Venezuela's oil. I think they have some of the biggest reserves of oil in the world. And same with Guyana. Guyana just discovered this massive fields off their coast. And so we want to ensure our own dominance. You got to think about like Trump and the leadership at the top of the MAGA movement. Very much, I don't want to say that they're post-millennialists, but they seem to act like post-millennialists in that, or even amillennialists to a certain degree, that they think that we have anywhere from decades to centuries left to go before the end kind of comes. They think life's just going to keep going on and on and on. So they're trying to best position ourselves as a nation to go on for the next 100 years. Well, China is doing the same thing. They think that this is their time to rise and finally come back, overthrow 6,000 years of human history, and now come and take over the world. The Russians know they're in trouble. Their population is rapidly declining. Their economy's in shambles. They're kind of a global pariah right now because of Ukraine. So, I mean, there's a lot of different geonational or civilizational type of wars going on. Who's going to take dominance over the earth? And again, they're all thinking in the terms of decades and centuries, whereas Bible believing, prophecy watching, or students of Bible prophecy, we're like, man, we're counting down like weeks, months, days, and years. Single digits. We're not looking for decades.
No.
So I think that's also the great disconnect between the leadership at across every government and just the average layperson just who reads his Bible or reads her Bible. We know that the church, the dispensation of the church, the church age had a beginning. It's going to have an end, just like every other dispensation. And so we seem to be at the end of ours, and they seem to be running in like these kind of 2,000 year increments. Going from Adam to Abraham, from Abraham to Christ, and from Christ's first coming to now his second coming. We're coming up on the 2000th anniversary of his, since he was on earth. So I think they sense something is changing. I think we are in the throes of the transitioning between the third industrial revolution and the fully investing into the fourth industrial revolution. And then I think the demonic world, the spiritual world, also can sense something, which is why they're going to begin throwing all this stuff around the earth. So all this stuff will be happening around the earth because Satan doesn't know when the rapture is going to happen. The demons don't know. The fallen angels don't know. But they know, I think they know history, and they said, hey, this seems to be happening every 2,000 years. So now everything's kind of ramping up. And they're also whispering these stuff to the leaders like George Soros and to Putin and Xi Jinping and all these guys around the world, trying to get them positioned, just like the frogs, those demonic frogs that come out of the mouth of the dragon, the Antichrist, and the false prophet that bring the whole world and marches them against Israel at the time of Armageddon. I think these things are now whispering things to like Klaus Schwab and to
absolutely.
Soros and others. Hey, we got to have this great reset. We got to have it by 2030. It's got to happen by 2030. And so it's that same demonic influence that's whispering into these guys' ears, telling them what they need to do and how to get ready. And we know that they're lying spirits, but we also know that those guys were there. The devil was there when Christ was crucified. He knows exactly when it was. He knows exactly when Christ was born. He knows exactly when the world was created. So I think he senses that time is running short too. And that's why we've had this ramp up of everything from space to the occult to globalism to these doctrines of demons. All of this stuff is just on steroids right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I mean, we see in the Word of God, I mean, it talks about those powers and principalities, and it says to be strong in the Lord, the power of his might, right? Put on the whole armor of God. It says we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly place. So there's a wrestle going on. There's a wrestling match, if you would, that's going on between God's people and those powers and those principalities that we read about in the Word. And they're not that which we see with our eyes, but that we can perceive and have an understanding of and know that exist, because the Word of God reveals that for us. It tells us that there are things going on in a realm in which our senses, for the most part, usually don't see and usually don't pick up on. And I've said this for a long time, that we know that these powers and principalities, that sometimes they interject or intersect, I would say, our reality of what we see, what we hear, what we perceive. Sometimes there's physical manifestations of things that take place in the spiritual realm, but for the most part, not. But those activities are taking place. And there is a different hierarchy, in fact, even of these things. In fact, even tomorrow is Halloween, right? And it's a time that a lot of people are celebrating that whole thing. I've never understood it. I drive down my neighborhood, and we've got people that have all of these like dark demonic like statues of things that are outside, and the skeletons and everything celebrating death. And I just think to myself, I mean, I just scratch my head. I just don't get it. I've really never understood it. Celebrating death. What are your thoughts about tomorrow being Halloween, and what should be a Christian approach to that?
Well, I know it's kind of complex in a sense, right? I understand the historical ties to Halloween. I understand, or to Samhain, to the Celtic, going all the way back to the Celts and to the Gauls, and the tie-in with paganism and pagan idolatry and all that kind of stuff. And I know that there's real spiritual forces behind these things. And I'm not advocating for Halloween either or anything. I think the only danger that I see in trying to dissuade people from participating in any holiday is the overdoing it into legalism, because right after Halloween we have Thanksgiving. People will come out and say that we shouldn't celebrate Thanksgiving, and because we disenfranchise the Native Americans, and then it'll move into Christmas. And if you have a Christmas tree up in your house, you're a pagan, blah blah blah. I mean, you see what I mean? Like, Halloween's the most obvious one, right? That we can kind of say, yeah, we need to distance ourselves from that. And I don't have any qualms with that. I don't celebrate it. I don't like. I think most people get, at least in the United States and the surface level, it's just a time for candy and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I feel like there is a race to see who's the most, pulled away from society. And you get things like the Jehovah's Witnesses. They don't even celebrate birthdays. They don't. I mean, there's that kind of extreme. And there's the Hebrew roots movement that said, now we got to go back under the law. And that ties in with completely separating. I mean, we live in America. We live in Western society. This is where we are. If we lived in Uganda or some other part of the world, we would be dealing with whatever the celebrations are there locally. But we are called to separate ourselves from the world and from the things of the world. And I realize that's not exactly practical for every person out there. It's not like we can just, we live out in the middle of nowhere. We can just kind of hide from everybody or stay away from everybody. I mean, a lot of folks, with kids especially, they're growing up in a school where everybody's dressed. Like the whole thing is just like, and so do we just send our kids, let them stay home that day? I mean, that's really up to the parents' decision. But I'm not supporting it. I'm not promoting it. I think I think that there are times in the year when the spiritual veil, if you will, is thinner. And I think Halloween is one of those times, which is why, Halloween goes back to, in recent time, to the Roman Catholic system, the All Saints Day. And we know that when the Roman Catholic Church when that fusion came in the third century, after Constantine normalized Christianity in the Roman Empire and quit persecuting the Christians, there was kind of this blending together of Christendom with the pagan culture around. So a lot of those pagan priests and the pagan temples to Jupiter or Mars or Venus or Aphrodite or whoever, those convert into Christian temples and Christian priests. And they drag some of that baggage with them, right? Some of that cultural baggage that they bring over from the Roman pagan side. And that just that's the way the Roman Catholic system has operated for the last, almost, 1,600 years or so, or longer. They go into a culture and they kind of blend in with that culture. So if you're a Roman Catholic diocese or parish in Africa or in South America, you end up taking on some of those kind of cultural and religious icons and effigies and things. And that gets kind of wrapped up into the local parish, which is where things like Santeria, voodoo, and all that kind of stuff kind of come out of South America, because the Catholic Church gets blended in with that. And you can even look, and I'm way off track now, but the cartels, like the drug cartels, they've created their own deity or their own saint, Santa Muerta, which, we think of Dia de la Muerta, which is the Day of the Dead, tied in with the Catholic faith and everything like that. But they've created Santa Muerta, who is the patron saint of death, which allows them to go out and just do these horrible, horrific things and kill people and torture them and do whatever, and still have some vestige of kind of religious authority behind it. And so that's the kind of the curse of the Roman Catholic system itself, is that it's blended into the world and allowed the world to come into it. And you think back to Matthew 13, to the parables, when Jesus mentioned the mustard tree, how that it grows into this, it's the normal, like kind of just a small tree, small bush kind of thing, and it becomes this massive tree, and all of the birds come and nest in the branches of the tree. When the context of those parables, the birds are seen as a negative thing, right? Because the birds are the ones that were eating the seed in the first parable. So they're out there doing damage to the gospel. Right. And now the birds are now nesting into the tree. And so it's kind of an inverse of Matthew 28, where Jesus says, go forth and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Instead of the church going out into the world and making disciples, the world is coming into the church and changing the church. So I don't, and here's last point. I've seen on X very recently, there's been this resurgence of Mormons coming out, Trump, coming out and listing all the reasons why the Mormon church is superior to evangelical Christianity. And like, we have the lowest divorce rate, we have the longest marriages, we do the most charities, blah, blah, and they just go on. And then they'll throw in a clip from like some Elevation church or some church like that, where they have the smoke machines and they're playing Michael Jackson's Thriller, and they're trying to be culturally hip to whatever's going on in wherever the church is. And they're saying, look, see, that's your modern church right there. And it's a complete, a straw man argument, and nothing to do with the fact that Mormonism has only been around for, since the 1840s, really, 1850s. And even then, they've had to revise their Bible so many times because there's so many heretical, blasphemous doctrines inside of there. They've had to rebrand themselves. And Mormon people, if you leave the church, you're completely disavowed. So, of course, they're going to have high marriage success rates, because the cost to the woman is disastrous. She's going to lose everybody. And I would say there's probably high or low divorce rates inside of like the Muslim world, because if the woman leaves, she's going to get beaten to death, right, or she's going to be, whatever, something terrible. So of course they would have low divorce rates. So that's not a metric we should use, or the fact that they do more charities than anybody else. But it is a black eye on the Christian church, the churches that call themselves Christians, that they're doing like this K-pop demoniac program that you sent me, and playing Thriller and doing these smoke machines and these right, big, has nothing to do with the gospel, has nothing to do with why the church meets or why the Bible. So this is part par for the course for where we are in this Laodicean age right now.
Well, and for me, my thing is, hey, if you want to have a day and have a celebration or, have some fun or whatever, that's fine. But when it's centered around the dark side and demonism and witches and shamans and all of those kinds of things, gruesome things, Word of God says had to have nothing to do with the deeds of darkness, those kinds of things. One of the things is when you were talking, I was thinking to myself, Jesus, he celebrated Hanukkah. We know that. We see that in the Word. But Jesus, he wouldn't celebrate something like Halloween. He wouldn't be
Jupiter or something.
Yeah, he wouldn't be involved in that. He wouldn't celebrate that or anything. And I guess as Christians, my thought is this: is that, and I know that there are Christians that'll do that. In fact, there's a lot of Christians actually that because they want their kids to be having fun and those kinds of things. I get that from that standpoint. But my thought is always this, is that we are called the called out ones as Christians. And that means that we're going to be separate from the rest of the world. Not that we are better than or those kinds of things, but just that we are called to be separate. That means that as Christians, as the Christian church, how we conduct ourselves is going to look different or should look different than the rest of the world. Yeah, you had mentioned this whole K-pop thing. Apostate Church holds blasphemous K-pop demon hunters communion ceremony. I mean, where is this anything Christian? It becomes the unchristian church and they say, well, hey, this is our way of be all things to all people. Well, but that's not what that means. To be all things to all people doesn't mean that you're compromising on things that are hard line that we're not called to compromise on. You had mentioned something which I found very interesting about churches, celebrating or not celebrating, but doing kind of thriller kind of reenactments. That actually happened here in Las Vegas. That happened here in Vegas approximately 15 years ago. Well-known church, at least at that time, I don't know still today, but a well-known church at that time for their Easter Resurrection Sunday, they kind of were promoting a brand new series that they were going to be teaching, knowing that they had a bunch of, you get all this influx of extra people in for Resurrection Sunday. They were promoting a brand new series, and so what they did is they had their staff practice this whole little mini play, and they were dressed up as the zombies in Michael Jackson's Thriller. And on Resurrection Sunday, they did a whole, what was that? Well, it was the Thriller song, skit, just like Michael Jackson did it in promotion of their new series. And I thought to myself, to me, it becomes the unchurched, Pete. It becomes the unchurched. At what point does the church not look like the church any longer? At what point have we not come out from them and been separate? And what we do find is we find a lot of the mixture that there's not to be that we see as well. So, hey guys, we're going to have some question and answers as well here. So I forgot to mention that, but so send in some of your questions and some of your statements. I'd love some of your statements on Halloween, some of your thoughts on that, some of your thoughts on these last days and what we're in and these seducing spirits. And I don't find this a spiritual thing to have K-pop demon hunters communion ceremony in the church. But let's see. Here's this question here from Gwen Stone. Do you think all these sudden sightings are a way to make the disappearance of the bride easier to explain to those left behind? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think a global crisis like the rapture is going to require global distraction. And I think that Satan is throwing everything at this, including the kitchen sink, so that when the rapture does happen, he has a ready-made excuse that the world would largely buy. And I tend to think it's going to be something like Three Eye Atlas or something to that effect, or something that's kind of on the cosmic scale, because we've had 75 years plus of science fiction, in our popular culture. We've had, obviously we've had space operations. We have a space command now. So we have a lot of things going in and out of that, outside of our atmosphere. And we've had this condition, and so for so long, like think about movies like Independence Day and the Close Encounters of the Third Kind and all that stuff. I think we're being conditioned, and so when it does happen, when the rapture does happen, and all these people disappear, they're going to have an excuse ready to go. And oh, by the way, there's this giant comet just happened to be passing by the Earth at that same time, or whatever the case is.
Right.
And if you think about it from another standpoint, from a strategic standpoint, what is Satan's ultimate goal? His ultimate goal is to break the global order down now from 193 nations into 10 regions, and then from 10 regions, it's going to be consolidated under the leadership of one man. So it's easier for one man to take over the world from 10 regions than it is from 193 separate nations. So it seems like everything that's happening now is being pushed in that direction to drive the world into this unified front. Well, what better way to unify the world than some type of alien? They're going to think of it as an alien, but some type of an alien threat. And so either the aliens, fallen angels, either they show up in hostile manner, and they present some type of a threat to the world that would unify mankind very quickly, just like in the movie Independence Day. But there's also a guy, Dr. John Brandenburg, a PhD plasma physicist or something, talking about this Three Eye Atlas, saying, "Hey, we know that you're watching us. Just remember what happened to Mars, and if you come here, you're going to leave. If you come in peace, or you're going to leave in pieces," or something. It was some kind of a I don't know if it was a joke or whatever, but it was a serious guy of science that's putting this out there in public, saying very serious about what he was talking about. But another way is if they show up in a peaceful manner, right? They show up and say, "Hey, we're your ancient alien fathers," or whatever. We seeded the planet 30 million years ago.
Right.
Then they'll come in peace, and that would also unify humanity again. So either way, his goal is the way he has to do it in the most quickest, fastest fashion possible is to get all of humanity under one leadership. So if God's I think when God does the rapture, I think that veil between the physical and the spiritual is going to be gone. It's going to be removed, and it's going to go back to the time like it was before the days, before the flood, in the antediluvian days of Noah, where the fallen angels interacted with the daughters of men, and all that kind of stuff. There was no barrier there at the time, and then after the flood, there was a barrier. And then after the rapture, that barrier is going to be removed, and the world's going to become incredibly supernatural overnight, in an instant. So,
Right. And, we'll see, or the world will see, the Antichrist is going to have the supposed political answers and the political way forward at that time, because I believe that the rapture is going to bring about a global crisis. There's no way, I don't see a way that it cannot. That I believe that the rapture is going to bring about a great global crisis. They're going to have some kind of a spin on it, Antichrist, as well as the false prophet, to come around and bring about some kind of a comfort to the world that is here, those that are left behind. Is the message going to be, hey, we were the ones that were creating all of the problems in the world, all of the strife in the world. We were the ones, the Christians were the ones that were bringing about, hey, don't unite, don't come together. That goes against the message that we see in the world today. I still see all of the time those stupid coexist bumper stickers. Those things are everywhere. right? But that is part of the mechanism and the system of the beast for the last times, is that we can, according to them, come together. We can coexist on a geopolitical, religious level, and we are viewed honestly, by the adversary as we're viewed as the adversary. It's kind of like the screw tape letters. It's that kind of thing. And so I believe that they're going to put the spin on it that, hey, whoever it is, they removed the bad one so that there can be that peace, that age of Aquarius. Remember that song going back quite a ways, Bring the age of Aquarius here. That's what they've been wanting to do for a long time. And I do believe that something's going to happen that's going to bring all of that about for sure. So, okay, so we've got this one here, Zagapes. I'd like to know where did that name come from? Zagapes. Is that a last name? Is that is there some meaning behind that? But question number 2, Halloween is coming tomorrow. Do you believe satanic things will be happening more tomorrow that we might see or not? I'll let you give your take on that first.
I don't know. 2025 has just been the most bizarre year on record. I mean, we started off with like these mystery drones and all over the U.S. Then we had this like mystery fog, and then we had California almost burned down, and then we had. I mean, it's just been nonstop weirdness from the get-go. So I don't know that tomorrow will be any more demonic than today has been or yesterday. It seems like the veil is thinning kind of across the board as we get closer to the time of the rapture. And I guess, let me just present this to people in this way. Think about Halloween like Pride Month. If you have any qualms about celebrating Halloween, would you celebrate Pride Month? Probably not. So if you read your Bible and believe your Bible, you're not going to be celebrating Pride Month. So we don't celebrate Halloween. But I don't want to get super legalistic about it either, because I think people still are holding to the 1950s or 60s or 70s idea of Halloween, that it's innocent, trick or treat, all that kind of stuff. And somewhere in the 80s and on, it just became very dark and very satanic, and it took a turn for the worse. Instead of kids dressing up like cowboys and Indians and robots or whatever, it just really went off dark.
Freddy Krueger and whatever else out there, Chainsaw Massacre, dude.
Yeah, so I think tomorrow obviously will be a high holy day for like Wiccans and for pagans around the world. And so do I think there'll be more demonic activity tomorrow? I mean, probably to a large degree. I don't know. Obviously tomorrow also, not tomorrow, but Saturday ends the CBP or not EBP, SNAP, all of the welfare benefits. And you've got all these people threatening to start rioting and all that. So I would certainly think that this Halloween preceding November 1st is maybe amping up, or the demonic realm is amping up people's animosity and anger and anxiety and making the world more violent and vitriolic. So I can certainly see it happening that way. And, but I don't know, I think every day is getting weirder and weirder. The closer we get to the end, things are just getting more and more bizarre.
It is getting super bizarre. And man, I had noticed this on WND. This woman threatens to hunt down, listen to this. She threatens to hunt down, roast, and eat white people if government assistance is taken away. Like, how do you even say that? And I mean, and the picture of this woman, I mean, she's all in red. I mean, she looks like she's wearing her like Satan jumpsuit here or something. All she needs is a couple of horns on her head. I mean, you're about to, and it says you're about to see the beast come out of a lot of people. People didn't even know that they had that in them. Wow. I mean, some of these video clips that I've seen of these people, like, they are going absolutely bonkers on this whole thing, by the way. And I don't think that the enemy needs a whole lot of an excuse, but yeah, it is a high holy day for sure within Satanism and Wicca, all of that. And so, yeah, I do believe that there's a ramped up activity. There's always activity, but I do believe that there's ramped up activity around high holy days, just as there would be ramped up activity, for us as Christians when we're getting close to or on the day of Resurrection Sunday. Resurrection Sunday, it's my favorite day of the year. I absolutely love Resurrection Sunday. And just as a little added bonus, every few years, my birthday will fall on Resurrection Sunday. And then it's like, oh man, that's even better yet. I don't know. I just love it. But I mean, so it is a day that is a high holy day, and they observe that, and there's no doubt about it. So Lori Saunders, why is the military and private donors involved in helping build a so-called ballroom in the White House?
I'm not sure the military is involved. If
Right.
they are, I'm not sure to what extent. I know that Trump raised all the funds through
Right.
either private donation or
Private
through
donations.
lawsuits that he's won against CBS, ABC, and Twitter and all the different groups that had deplatformed him. He's won all these lawsuits, so I think that money is going into it. As far as why is he building a ballroom? I mean, the guy's a real estate developer. That's what he's spent his whole life, and he's gonna leave his mark on the White House. And again, because he thinks that there are still decades and decades and centuries to go, like he still thinks there's another 200-300 years of American history ahead of us. He's got his religious advisor, Paula White. I mean, she's not giving him good, solid, eschatological information. And Mike Huckabee, for whatever reason, I guess, is not able to influence him in that regard, or Robert Jeffries or the other kind of solid Christian men that are around him or have access to him. So I don't know. I think like a lot within, I don't want to say Turning Point USA, but there is within the Christian right this embracing of postmillennialism and this embracing of amillennialism, that we are the kingdom right now. If we are not the kingdom right now, we need to bring the kingdom, right? And so they're not thinking of a rapture in a couple of years or less. I mean, for one, most of them don't even believe in the rapture. These are Christians. They're still thinking decades and centuries to go. And I've got friends that are in this kind of camp. And, I ask them, hey, when do you think the Lord's going to come back? And they're like, well, not in my lifetime. I mean, they're young, they're younger than me. So I'm like, wow, that's insane. It's surprising to hear a really well-read, studied Christian actually believe that, So I just think that they don't think that we're in the last days. They still think we have, decades and decades to go. So
I guess from my perspective, how I look at this whole thing with what the president is doing there with the White House ballroom is, first of all, like you said, I think it's $250 million. It's a ton of money, but it's all raised by private donations. So why not? I do think that the timing probably isn't the best timing right now when we've got the government shutdown, though. It's just not a good foot forward. It's not a good look, if you would. It's not good optics. But with that being said, it's privately funded. What's the problem with that? When there are big White House events, they've got to put up these big, giant tents out there. I mean, this is the United States of America, and we've got big events going on White House grounds in a tent. I mean, it's kind of weird, if you ask me. So yeah, I mean, I got no problem if they want to expand the building. Expand the building. I mean, it's not a cost to U.S. taxpayers. But again, I do think that the optics of it and the timing probably is not the best thing. It's, it just isn't. But it is what it is. And let's understand that President Trump, I mean, is a developer by trade. It's what he is. He's a developer. And he likes things looking nice. So, okay, whatever. To me, personally, it's an onion. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, he came in there and redecorated the White House after Biden's, tenure. So repainted things, replaced things. I mean,
Redid the
I
Oval
think
Office on his own dime.
yeah, and I think the idea that for in order for them to do something like a banquet or whatever, and the fact that they have to go off the grounds there of the White House to some other part of the city where they don't control that, like from a security standpoint, it makes a lot of sense
It
to
does.
have there.
It
But
really does. And it's funny because you've got all of these different news outlets out there freaking out. It's like no matter what the president does, I mean, if he changes his underwear, they got an issue with it, I swear. They'll say something no matter what the guy does. But last time I remember, I mean, there's been all kinds of renovations that have taken place over the years. And let's remember Jackie Kennedy. She did all kinds of renovations there and really wanted to make the place, fix the place up and give it a facelift and everything. And I don't think anyone had a problem. Maybe they did. I don't know. That was before my time, but I don't think anyone had a problem with that. I don't know. I just, to me, it's a nothing. But so we've got from Rumble asking a question. Medic Marie, do you gentlemen think this comic could be Wormwood in Revelation? No.
no.
No. For one thing, we're not in the time of the tribulation, and that thing's going to be excuse the pun, but high-tailed out of here, so to speak, before any of that takes place, and so there's really no connection. But
Maybe Apophis, which will hit somewhere, or it'll pass by the Earth in 2029, but not Atlas or any of the present ones like Lemon and the rest of the Swan that are going on right now.
So we've got Sincole saying this Halloween will be it's a statement. This Halloween will be the best since 1993. The Jays are going to win the World Series. Now there is faith. That's awesome. That's good. That's good. I love it. All right, God's Warrior making a statement. Schumann resonates.
Schumann resonance.
Resonance. Okay, caused by CMEs and ionosphere related to electronic global resonance formed by the Earth's cavity has been off the charts. You have anything on that?
Yeah, obviously, I think much of what happens on the tectonic plates and stuff around the Earth is driven by what happens with the sun and to a certain degree to the moon's gravitational pull on the Earth. So when the sun is very active, I think that we see this uptick in earthquake activity around the world. We had one just right before Melissa hit Jamaica. It was like I want to say it was a 6.2 or 6.8. I mean, this is a pretty big earthquake. I don't know to what extent, if it did any damage or where it was. It was kind of out there southeast of Puerto Rico, that direction. But if you think about solar activity and how much that it really has an impact on the Earth, think back to Washington. The famous painting of Washington crossing the Delaware, and the Delaware was like frozen over like a glacier. That was during the time they call the Maunder minimum. It was like a 70-year period where the sun was in the solar minimum, where there was very little activity on the sun. But now, since at least the 80s, we've been in the sun's activity has increased, and it goes kind of through, I think, these lulls, every so many years.
Right. There's a maximum and a minimum.
Yeah, but we're in a maximum now, so things are going to keep ramping up, and I think that speaks to all types of changes in our weather, changes in the tectonic plates. And one of the things I've mentioned in the past is since global warming became an issue, since Al Gore and all that, I think in 2013 they began studying the ice melt from the Antarctica. And one of the things they noticed, and they have studies, year after year after year, detailed studies, showing that the ice melting, and generally that would turn the water around Antarctica brackish because you have all that fresh water melting and mixing in with the salt water. Well, what they've noticed is that over these years, the water's become saltier and not more brackish, even though the ice is melting. They couldn't figure out what was happening. And so part of that was that one of the theories, one of the most reasonable theories, I think, is that the because of the solar activity is increasing, that's also causing the tectonic plates to shift and move and do things. That's unleashing a lot of this volcanic activity under the Antarctic shelf, which is free. It's heating up and it's thawing out all of this ice that's trapped minerals and all this trapped carbon and everything that's been trapped under ice for centuries since the Maunder minimum time period. And then that stuff is getting released into the atmosphere. So the minerals are mixing in with the water, causing it not to become brackish, but to remain salty. But then the carbon is being released into the atmosphere. Then if you think about a globe, right, the thing about the Earth, here's Antarctica. Let me see if I get back into the camera. At the bottom, and all of that carbon is being released into the atmosphere and it's moving up to the equator. And that's also strengthening the La Nina and El Nino jet streams, that it's like strengthening these jet streams, which is why the weather has become way more volatile. And not just, we've had volatile weather in the past, but it seems like it's stronger and more frequent because now these jet streams are supercharged. And that's why I think the Tornado Alley is shifting over. It's shifting eastward. It's moving away from Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma and North Texas. And it seems like it's shifting over to like Missouri and to, kind of east of Oklahoma and east of Kansas and those places. And we're starting to see this massive uptick in a shifting of where these tornadoes happen. And even like normal thunderstorms and these fronts that are coming down are much stronger on a more routine basis than they have been in the past. So it's a theory, but it seems to make sense to me, and it lines up with the solar activity increase.
All right, so we've got Jonobly. Isn't tomorrow supposed to be the day the ark landed? Kids should dress up as animals and celebrate that. Yeah, here's the thing. It goes back to something that you had said earlier, is that, and when I was a kid, I mean, it wasn't so overtly demonic as it is right now. It's so much more out in the open today. We find more and more of an idolization, if you would, or idolizing, there you go, of the demonic, of evil, of the grotesque, a fascination with evil, and that's part of the danger for these kids. Is what happens is that one gravitates towards the sinful nature. It's like I said before, I never had to teach my children to lie. Yeah. Because they were born into the sinful nature. I never taught my children to respond to when I ask them to do something, to say no. It was a natural, by way of being born with the sinful nature, to reject what you're being told to do. That's the natural thing. That's the thing of the flesh. That's the fallen nature. And so what we're finding is that these kids, more and more, as society is descending into chaos and into lawlessness, they're embracing these things, and it's more out in the open and more overtly evil than what had been seen in the past. And so there you go. But which to me speaks of the very nature and foundation of that whole celebration of that holiday to begin with. So Jason Garza said, do you believe the Roman Catholic Church is Luciferian?
I believe the system of it is Luciferian, yes. So what I mentioned earlier about Constantine and the kind of the blending of the pagan culture within Christendom, I think we see that proliferated throughout the centuries. through the idea of the Holy Roman Empire, which the Germans, because that was centered there around Germany well, it wasn't Germany then, but the Germania area with Charlemagne and whatnot. But that was considered the First Reich, and then going forward from there, you had the Knights Templars and the Crusades and the Templars, and then you had the Inquisitions, and so you had a lot of dark and violent things moving at the behest of the Roman Catholic system. And at the same time, you had a lot of the Roman Catholic clergy were very much invested in studying the demonic and writing these like grimoires and things like the Lesser Keys of Solomon and all manner of these things. And all of that stuff is being held in these secret places under the Vatican and their libraries and their vaults. And so the Catholic Church itself believes that it wrote the Bible, that it put the Bible together. Therefore, they can manipulate, or they can put in what they want or take out what they want, which is why they include the Apocrypha, which they didn't include the Apocrypha until like the 1500s. I think it was after the Reformation or somewhere around the time of the Reformation. So it's not like they always held to the apocryphal books, but they added it in because they felt like they have that authority. And it's their authority to understand all the deep, dark secrets. And, Jesus addresses this in chapters 2 or 3 of Revelation. And I hold to those churches being the chronology of the church age over the years. And so speaking to the church of Thyatira, which is what I think would be representative of the Roman Catholic system, note that God does have positive, or Jesus does have positive things to say about each of the churches with the exception of Laodicea. Laodicea is the only one he has nothing positive to say about it. But even within Thyatira, he says, I know your deeds, and there are some of you that are doing well, but to those that are holding to the I forget what the exact phrasing of it is, the deep secrets of Satan or whatever, that the hierarchy of the Roman Catholic system is absolutely Luciferian, and the things that they promote within Roman Catholicism as a religion is not in line with true biblical Christianity, because it's very much a works-based religion. You have to do this many Hail Marys, you've got to do this, you got to do this, and you got to do this. And if you're lucky, you might go to purgatory, and then you have to have your families pray you out of purgatory. And, it's all based on your works and all this stuff. And so that is very antithetical to true biblical Christianity, which says that we are saved by grace through faith, not of works, lest any man should boast. And we know that our salvation doesn't come from our own righteousness, it comes from Christ's righteousness. And we are simply called to believe in him and believe in that he is capable of saving us. And that begins to transform us from the inside out. And that's when we get saved. But so, yeah, I think there are Christians inside of the Catholic system that probably to a large degree don't hold to all of the Roman Catholic theology, but that's the culture they live in. There may be no other kinds of churches around, or whatever the case is. They can't leave because their family's all tied up in it. And God looks at each person individually. So we're not saved by the denomination we attend. You could attend a Baptist church, a solid Baptist. You could go to John MacArthur's church your whole life and die and go to hell if you've never professed faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. So it has nothing to do with the actual denomination you're in, and everything to do with your heart and whether your heart's right with the Lord or not. And but I think as a system, as a religious system, yes, it is absolutely Luciferian.
Yeah, they've actually got, and I'm trying to look it up in my archives here, but and it's in there somewhere. But there's this building, this audience hall, papal audience hall, there on Vatican grounds, I guess it is, and it's creepy, and I'm sure that you've seen it before. The background behind where the Pope would be seated, the whole background, it looks like a serpent. In fact, the building from above, it looks like a serpent. I mean, why would you have, of all things, a serpent, right? And that's exactly, you see the serpent eyes, the whole thing. And it is absolutely creepy. It is so just the very nature of the question itself, and that's what it brings me back to, is that whole thing. So it's pretty creepy stuff. Pookie Martinez. What y'all think of Trump and South Korea $353 billion trade agreement?
Well, he's trying to shore up his alliances with his allies, with Malaysia, with South Korea,
Japan?
with Japan, and so he's making all these deals. In particular, like Cambodia. I think he got struck this really big mineral deal with them because China had threatened to cut the U.S. off from any rare earth
Rare
minerals.
earth?
So he comes into this meeting with Xi Jinping after having this successful meeting with Japan, with South Korea, with Malaysia, Cambodia. And then he goes in and meets with Xi Jinping. So he's got some leverage. So this is all about leverage right now. And the Chinese have been cut off from American technology. There's certain high degrees of microprocessing chips and all that kind of stuff that we're not sharing that stuff with them anymore, and we're very actively pushing back against all their cyber hacking, et cetera, and all the Chinese spies and espionage stuff going on in the U.S. Much more than obviously the Bidens were bought and paid for by the Chinese. So now that a real president comes back in and begins clamping down on all this stuff, they're kind of stomping their feet and throwing a fit about it. So then China, threatens to cut us off, and then we threaten this 100% tariff, and then we decide to have this kind of high-level meeting. But before he goes to Xi, he's going to go in having successful, meetings in Malaysia, with Cambodia, with South Korea, with Japan, and arming up his allies and strengthening his allies, so that when he goes and sits down with Xi Jinping in South Korea, that he has leverage. And so I think that's what this is all about.
And it goes back. I mean, it's not only Biden and the Obamas and the Democrats. Yes, it is them, but it's also the Republican Party as well. I mean, you go all the way back, for example, to Bush Sr., the whole New World Order, these kinds of things. The United States, for many decades, has been selling the proverbial economic soul of America to the world. And instead of building like we did in many of our earlier days in this country, instead of building and having all of the factories and the development and all of those things, we've outsourced things to other parts of the world. We've put our trust in the globalized kind of system, and that's both political parties, again, gang, has done that. Trump comes along and he's got another way of looking at it. Now, what I'm not saying is that everything, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that everything that Trump does is right. I'm not saying that I agree with everything that Trump does. What I am saying is that Trump does believe in an America First doctrine. He believes in a strong military, a strong financial and economic infrastructure here within the United States in bringing things back to the mainland, so to speak. And I mean, it's a problem when you've got China that makes the majority of our essential medications. That is a national security issue. Trump talked about it all the way back in his first administration, and he was spot on right with that. That is a national security issue. When you have the majority of Americans that are dependent upon many key pharmaceuticals, and the majority of those key pharmaceuticals are coming from China, I think we've got a serious thing on our hands, a serious issue. When you've got so many of the rare earth elements that are there under the control of communist China, and those rare earth elements are utilized in our cell phones and a whole host of other technologies that we have, that ends up becoming a key strategic issue for the United States that has to be dealt with. It just has to be dealt with. Like I said, we've sold our economic soul to the world in this whole globalization thing. So Trump is trying to bring some of those things back and trying to, I get the point, make America great again. I know that there are some out there in Bible prophecy world that that look at what he's doing as having kind of devious purposes, if you would, or whatever. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think that again, he's not looking at this from a biblical lens, a true biblical lens, in that
No.
we don't have, uh, decades and centuries left. We were really down to single digit years, I think, at this point. We can't be exactly certain, but it seems like if history, the pattern holds true, then we should be in that window. So, but he's not looking at this. So he's trying to look at how to set America up for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
Right.
So everything he's doing now is really geared towards that. And then whether you're talking about the immigration policy, whether you're talking about economic alliances and long-term agreements to secure mineral rights or oils or gas or whatever, whether it's bringing back the cultural idea of what it is to be American, the Constitution, rule of law, all that kind of stuff. So he's going to do whatever he thinks he's got to do to preserve that. And this talk about him running in a third term, he doesn't have to run as president in a third term. He can always be a vice president, and I think he can run as vice president, and he can let JD Vance run as the president. So that would absolutely be a winning ticket. And then he'd be 82 at the time. So if something happened to him, he could just be replaced, and it doesn't change the guy at the top. So I think that everything he does is through that strategic lens of preserving America for the next century. And again, he's not getting fed solid biblical doctrine, because largely the church has abandoned eschatology. They abandoned true biblical eschatology in favor of, uniformitarianism, some idea, this normalcy bias that since the rapture didn't happen yesterday and didn't happen 100 years ago, it's not going to happen tomorrow. And I think that's a dangerous way to live and to operate and to function. And it's definitely going to catch the world off guard. And I've read through enough national security, intelligence briefs where they look forward 10 years or they look forward 5 years, and they're trying to forecast what the next major threats are going to be. And not a single one of them I've ever read in 20 something years has ever included the rapture as a possibility.
Right.
So,
right. Well, and just because the system of the beast is, and the infrastructure, maybe might even be better yet to say the infrastructure of the beast system and of globalization is being built, it doesn't mean that individuals that are doing what they're doing are doing it for that purpose.
Right.
Okay. So there's a difference between, like they said, there's a difference between correlation and causality and all of these kinds of things. That what's the intention of what an individual is doing, but what will end up becoming of what an individual is doing. Speaking about a world leader, some of these tech leaders that are out there, these technocrats and all of that. Some of them, I believe some of them, their desires are world domination. For others, it's not, but what they're doing ultimately is going to be those tributaries that are going to feed into that very thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got this question here from Laura Pettiford. Question: do you think the people that get EBT, electronic bank transfers, will have to get a chip when they sign back up for government assistance? I hear people talking about this in my town. Interesting. I'd be interested to know what town you're in. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a chip just yet. Certainly, the technology is getting to that point where it could be a possibility in a couple of years. If the right crisis comes along. But I think one of the things that this whole scandal with the government shutdown has exposed is just how many people on the welfare system are not even American citizens. So that stands to reason, given Trump's current policy for, kicking all the illegals out. And even listening to JD Vance last night, or I caught it last night. I don't know when it was when he spoke at Turning Point USA in Mississippi. And he said, look, we have too many immigrants. It's impossible for them to assimilate into our country if we don't stop or slow it down. Um, and, not only shut the borders down, but slow down even legal immigration, because we've got to give time for the people that are here to assimilate
Right.
into American culture, not create these little pockets of tribes, all over the place that are just doing their own thing. So I think what will be probably coming out of the backside of all of this is that you're going to have to prove your citizenship if you want your benefits to turn back on. And so I can see that being tied in, but I don't think it would be tied in with the mark. But we're seeing the steps, right, of how we're going to eventually get there. You got to get a real ID.
Right.
First of all, you have to have some kind of a social. You got to, back in the 40s, they started issuing out Social Security cards, and then had to get some kind of personal identification. Then you had to have your picture on it, and then you had to have a passport, and then you had to have now the real ID on the star on your little driver's license. And so we're seeing these kind of steps being moved forward towards more and more integrated into some kind of a biometric system that eventually will culminate with the mark of the beast. And I'm writing a book now called The Image of the Beast, or it's not titled that, but it's about the image of the beast and how do we get there. And just looking at all the technology that is being developed from 30, 40 years ago into where we are today, you can see how it's easily going to come about. We don't know the form it's going to come about in just yet, but we know that the technology is almost there. I mean, if it's not there already, it's very close to being perfected. And I think that the mark of the beast will be the crowning jewel of human technology, because it's going to be so much more than just something that you scan over, a barcode reader to pay for your groceries. I mean, I think it's going to be tied into your DNA. I think it's going to be tied into whatever the global network is going to be going on, the Beast 6G system or whatever. That may be Starlink. Starlink may be, converted into this new global system or whatever. So I think that the mark itself will be the technological crowning achievement of mankind, and not some big massive machine. I think it's going to be this little bitty chip, and it could make somebody's IQ go from 100 to 400. We don't know all the implications of what it's going to be sold or marketed as, but it will definitely be something so desirable. And it's like every other government thing, right? Like when in 2020, at the end of 2020, when the shots were first rolled out, it was, obviously it was a voluntary, and then it was encouraged, and then it was strongly encouraged, and then it was mandatory, and then it was mandatory upon pain of losing your job. And then you're kind of being banned from everywhere if you don't have it or you can't show your papers. The same process, I think, will play out in the early part of the 70th week for the mark. And then by the midpoint, it's either take it or you get your head cut off, or it's pain of death, ultimately. So we're not there yet, but I think we can see this is the steps, that it's part of the steps going towards that.
Yeah, it certainly is part of the trajectory of all of these things. I had shared recently a couple of stores that I had gone into, and now they're not. Well, one of them is a store. One of them is my doctor's office. It's a major company here in town, and they're saying we're not taking checks anymore. We're not taking cash anymore. So what's happening is that everything is being brought into using your card, and the chip that's in the card, you just kind of tap it, and it's real simple. One of the questions that come in, do you think that this administration will utilize a digital ID? I don't believe that this administration will utilize a digital ID. That's my pretty strong opinion that I have on that. But I do believe that it is coming here to America for sure. It certainly is. It might have been slowed down, but it is coming to America, because everything is going to have to operate on a global level the same way for systems to be properly integrated between the global economy. When you talk about the World Bank and the Bank of International Settlements, all of these kinds of things. Listen, it's too costly. This is part of the problem too with cash money and coin money. It costs more money to actually make the stuff. There's the counterfeiting of all of those things that is extremely problematic. I get all of that as well. So things are moving more and more towards digital systems. But the thing is that in moving closer and closer to and embracing these digital systems, what ultimately will happen is that you're putting a lot of power in the hands of a few. And that's where these things will be so easily corrupted ultimately during the time of the Antichrist in Revelation 13. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So
Absolutely.
absolutely. So, well, hey, man, we've gone over a little bit today, but thank you so much for being on the program today. I think we've had a great time discussing all of these things that we've discussed. I know there's so much more that we could talk for hours and hours and hours, but glad to have everyone that's joining with us today. Hey, make sure both with my program as well as yours, hey, listen, people can connect with you in the description section of our video today. You can connect with everything that Pete Garcia is doing out there. Encourage you to do that, like and subscribe to him. And if you're not liked and subscribed to our channel, encourage you to do so as well, and put everything out there on your social media, share it with everybody, and let's just get the word out, guys. Let's get the word out, because we live in dark days, but let's remember that we have the light of Christ in our lives, and that his light is piercing and has pierced the darkness. Certainly the darkest place of all was our souls before we came to Jesus, and now we have the Holy Spirit. And praise the Lord for that. We are the saved of the Lord. We are the redeemed of the Lord. We are children of God. We have a bright, bright future. Even though things in this world are dark right now, we know that the Lord is going to come and he's going to rapture us out of here. We know at the end of it all, we're going to be coming back on those horses with the Lord. Man, we've got a wonderful future ahead, don't we, Pete?
Oh, it's an amazing future, and I can't wait. I mean, there's nothing right now in this world. There's no problem I have right now that the rapture can't solve. So,
amen. Amen. All right, folks. Well, hey, thanks again for joining us today, and thank you again, Pete. And look forward to next time. And gang, like we say all the time, we look forward to seeing you, whether it be here, there, or in the air. God bless you all.